America is once again standing at the crossroads of global trade, geopolitical calculation, and economic strategy, and this time, the spotlight is fixed squarely on a single sentence spoken by former President Donald J. Trump. A sentence that may sound simple, but carries enormous consequences for the United States, China, global markets, and the stability of the interconnected world economy. Trump announced that China's President Xi Jinping has more or less agreed to accelerate purchases of U.S. goods. But to truly understand what this means, why it matters, and how it might shake the foundations of global power, we need to go deeper, much deeper. Because in geopolitics, nothing is ever as simple as a friendly agreement, especially not when it involves the world's two largest superpowers. What Trump said may sound like a promise, but promises in international politics are rarely words. They're strategic signals, coded warnings, economic leverage, and political chess pieces. So today, we're going to unravel everything behind this statement. We're going to dive into the real intentions behind China's sudden willingness to buy more American goods. We're going to analyze what this means for trade, for supply chains, for farmers, for the manufacturing base, for the tech industry, for Wall Street, for the US dollar, and for the looming shadow of a new Cold War. And most importantly, we are going to explore the hidden risks that no politician will ever say aloud. Because when Trump says China agreed, the question isn't what China agreed to. The real question is, why would China agree now? What does China want in return? And what happens to America if this agreement collapses? So let's begin at the surface level. What does accelerate purchases actually mean? Under Trump's previous trade negotiations, China committed to buying more American agricultural products, more energy, more manufactured goods, and more services. But China did not meet those commitments fully. Some purchases were made, yes, but promises were broken. Deadlines slipped, and as tensions rose, the trade balance between the U.S. and China remained heavily one-sided in China's favor. So when Trump now says that she has agreed, even partially, to accelerate purchases, this signals something important. China is showing willingness to comply with something it had previously resisted. But China does not simply give concessions. Chinese leadership only makes economic promises when it benefits China's strategic interests. So again, the real question, what has changed? Why now? The answer lies in global pressure points that China can no longer ignore. China is facing an economic slowdown unlike anything it has seen in decades. Its housing market has collapsed. Youth unemployment is skyrocketing. Its exports are struggling due to supply chain diversification, rising tensions with the West, and internal economic weaknesses. Factories are closing. Foreign investors are pulling back. Global companies are relocating production to Vietnam, India, Mexico, and the United States itself. For the first time in modern history, China's economic model is showing cracks, deep and dangerous cracks. And when China's economy suffers, its global ambitions suffer too. China needs stability. China needs growth. China needs markets. And above all, China needs a predictable relationship with the United States, even if that relationship is tense, competitive, and filled with rivalry. So when Trump says China is willing to accelerate purchases, what it really means is that China is trying to stabilize its economy by returning to something it desperately needs: access to American agriculture, American energy, American consumer goods, American services, and American financial markets. But China is not the only one under pressure. The United States also benefits from this move heavily. American farmers need export markets. American manufacturers need large-scale buyers. American companies need reliable trade flows. And American investors prefer calm markets over volatile ones. When China agrees, even vaguely, to buy more American products, it reassures markets. It reduces uncertainty. It boosts business confidence. And it strengthens the U.S. economy, at least in the short term. But the question remains, is this good news? Or is it a dangerous illusion? Because every gain in geopolitics comes with a cost. Every agreement comes with a hidden clause. And every diplomatic smile hides a silent calculation. So let's examine the deeper layers behind this development. First, we must analyze the political timing. Why would China signal cooperation at a moment when tensions appear to be rising over Taiwan, technology export controls, rare earth minerals, AI chips, cybersecurity, and the global military balance? China is preparing for something bigger, something long-term, something that requires a stable relationship with the U.S., at least temporarily. China is focused intensely on its timeline for Taiwan. Beijing knows that a confrontation over Taiwan would reshape global markets. It knows that Western nations, especially the United States, are strengthening alliances in the Indo-Pacific. Japan is increasing military spending. The Philippines is inviting more U.S. military presence. Australia is strengthening its defense position. European nations are turning their eyes toward Asia, and Taiwan itself is preparing for the possibility of conflict. Against this backdrop, China has two choices: escalate tensions now or buy time. Buying more U.S. goods is not just about economics. It's about buying time. Time to strengthen its military. Time to build domestic production. Time to secure raw materials. Time to prepare for a world where its relationship with the U.S. may change drastically. From the American perspective, Trump's statement sends a political message domestically as well. It allows him to claim victory on trade. It allows him to argue that he can pressure China into compliance. It allows him to present himself as the negotiator capable of extracting concessions from America's biggest rival. But beneath the political theater, there are risks that must be faced honestly. China's promises have been broken before, and this agreement, if it even becomes formal, may still suffer the same fate. China has a long history of using trade concessions as temporary tools. When pressured, China agrees. When pressure eases, China backtracks. Agreements dissolve. Targets are missed. Disputes return, and the cycle begins again. There is also the question of dependency. The United States must ask itself, should America rely heavily on China for export stability? Should American agriculture be dependent on Chinese buyers? Should American energy producers rely on Chinese demand? Should American companies structure their future around China's unpredictable political decisions? The truth is, the United States benefits greatly from Chinese purchasing power. But that same dependency can weaken America's strategic position. Because if China ever wants leverage, all it needs to do is slow purchases, or redirect supply chains, or reduce orders, or shift markets. This is why some analysts argue that even if China accelerates purchases, the U.S. must remain cautious. Because China's economic promises are not gifts. They are tools. Tools for negotiation. Tools for influence. Tools for delaying confrontation. At the same time, we must look at how the world views this announcement. Europe watches with unease. Japan watches with caution. Southeast Asia watches with calculation. And Russia watches with suspicion, because increased U.S.-China economic cooperation complicates Russia's position. If China is strengthening economic ties with the U.S., what does that mean for the Russia-China partnership? The global chessboard is shifting beneath the surface. Markets may celebrate this announcement, but diplomats read it differently. Analysts understand that when superpowers cooperate economically during times of rivalry, it's usually not because trust exists, but because necessity demands it. And necessity is the engine behind almost all geopolitics. So where does this lead us? What will happen next? If China truly accelerates purchases, this could temporarily stabilize U.S.-China economic relations. It could help reduce volatility. It could support American farmers and industries. It could calm markets. It could slow the march toward decoupling and economic conflict. But this calm would be temporary, because the underlying tensions remain unsolved. The technology rivalry continues. The military buildup continues. The race for AI supremacy continues. The struggle for influence continues. And the battle for global leadership continues. This agreement, if it becomes real, is not peace. It is a pause, a momentary alignment of convenience, not trust. America must decide whether to use this pause to strengthen itself or to relax. China will certainly use it strategically, that much is guaranteed. And as for the future, one thing is certain: agreements like these are fragile. They exist as long as they serve the interests of both sides. When those interests shift, and they will, the world will feel the impact. So yes, Trump's announcement may sound like good news, but geopolitical news is never purely good. It is a mixture of benefits and risks, opportunities and dangers, hope and caution. And behind every diplomatic promise lies a storm waiting to form. This is the complexity of global trade. This is the reality of U.S.-China relations. And this is the truth behind Trump's statement.